Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this very first Nayanta Conversation. We're delighted that the very first Nayanta Conversation is with Kris Gopalakrishnan, and we're delighted because of many reasons. First, Kris, as you all know, is one of the founders of a company that's truly iconic. Infosys is one of our most respected companies. It's been one of our most respected companies for decades, setting standards of performance, ethics, governance that is simply set a new bar as a company, both as a result of the founding team and as a result of the policies that were put in place and followed. But even more, I think, important to us is that Kris as an individual is someone who I have personally always hugely both admired and really been very fond of. And the reason is that he brings to bear a set of capabilities and an approach. You know, Ranjan in a comment in our session today talked about attitude. And Kris, to me, has always had this amazing attitude to any achievement, to anything we want to deliver. And to me, that has been constantly inspiring. I got to know Kris through CI. We've done many things together in CI, many visits together in the US, in the UK, in Singapore, at least those three places, and maybe more than one visit to each of those three places. One of the most amusing ones was when we were trying to go to a meeting in the White House, and Kris's passport name and the name that they had down did not match. And it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon in August in Washington, DC. It was hot, humid, and we were all wearing suits, and they wouldn't let us in. Because the security needed to contact this US consulate in Bombay and get clearance that he was indeed legitimate because your name is Senapati on your passport, and you'd given the name of Kris Gopalakrishnan. So anyway, so Kris, it's wonderful to have you here. And the last reason that I think is so valuable that we're having this first conversation with you is that you're one of the founders of Nayanta. We will talk about Nayanta University later on and what we're trying to achieve together. But we truly appreciate the support you've provided, the encouragement you've provided, and the wisdom you've provided all along in this process. So wonderful to have you here, Kris, and we hope it's the first of many visits to Pune for a Nayanta Conversation. And we'll do the Nayanta Conversation in Bangalore as well sometime. Sure. So I understand that the format that we're going to follow is that Kris will first, I think, show us a couple of slides and try to get us all up to speed because many of us will know a lot about Infosys, but we all need to get to the same sort of level of understanding. Then we'll talk for a bit, and I'll particularly ask Kris some questions about some very distinctive elements of Infosys, which I think are a bit less well known about what really set that company apart. And then in the conversation, we're going to move on to life beyond Infosys, because I think that in many respects is even more interesting than the Infosys story. So Kris, wonderful to have you here, and over to you.
So thank you, Naushad, for that introduction. I feel, I'm part of the founding team, and the founding team are all achievers, and in that sense, I don't see myself as distinct or separate. We are all together in this, and we have worked together for now 3-4 years. With this dream, 5 years, yes, with this dream of building a world-class private university in India. So I'm as much part of the founding team. I'm not separate, distinct, etc. in that sense. The way I want to start this is to give you a context of where I'm coming from and what is driving me today. And what is driving me today is the experience that I had in building Infosys and building this industry in India. And I want to place before you that every one of you have the opportunity to probably not just replicate, but outdo what we achieved. And that's what is passionate in my mind, and that's what is driving me today. Because, we talked about potential, right? The potential in front of us is huge. And it is only together, collectively, we can achieve that. And if you want to do this, there are certain principles that we need to follow. This is what I've learned. And that's what I want to, those are the perspectives that I want to share with you. I've learned it by certain principles, I said, but I also have transformed myself in this journey. So I'll start very briefly to talk about that actually. My education has been full of twists. Okay, you may have heard about it. My parents wanted me to become a doctor. I didn't get admission to MBBS. So I'm forced to change my, direction. I took physics. Luckily got into IIT Madras for MSc Physics. There I got introduced to computers and then got admission to MTech Computer Science. Again changed my field. And then of course was lucky to be part of the founding team of Infosys. But it's been twists and turns, etc. Similarly, when you look at early in my career, I'm a complete nerd. I'm an introvert. Okay. So again, I had to learn new skills, new capabilities all through. From being a nerd to being able to sell an idea, a concept, a product, to deliver that, leading large teams, then go on to, of course, later on become CEO, etc. Lot of changes and adjustments I have had to make in my life. Now looking at the industry, Infosys first of all, again, we created Infosys in 1981. India was a closed economy. Again, we had to actually struggle through a lot of things, a lot of challenges that we were faced with. And we overcame this systematically, consciously, step by step. These were, decisions we took and consciously made those changes. And I'll talk about a couple of examples so that you understand what I mean by that. And lastly, it's not just Infosys. If you look at the IT services industry in India, most of them were not by business families. Most of them were by technocrats. FC Kohli, Ramadurai, Chandra, technocrats actually. Many of the other founders, Shiv Nadar, HCL. You can probably say business family, but it was a very small business, nothing to do with IT. When Asim Premji took over, he shifted to the computer industry. Again, created Wipro. First generation entrepreneurs, fierce competitors, but we all decided to work together to create an industry. If there was only one Infosys or one Wipro or one TCS, the world would not talk about India's IT power. We created an industry, and that, again, there is a learning there, because I feel that we have to, when we want to transition to become a developed economy, India becoming a developed economy, we have to build industries. We can't be just one company, right? Because the scale is necessary for us to create that ecosystem for influencing government policies. Otherwise, the government policy will be seen as making the change for one company. So, for example, if the government of India came out with tax incentive for exports, it didn't do it for Infosys or a Wipro or a TCS. It did it for the IT services industry, right? So, if we had not thought about building this industry, creating the brand of Indian IT industry, we would not been where we are today. Today, it's a $250 billion industry. If you look at the top 10 companies in the world, there will be 5 from India, world class, and it has become the default way in which services are delivered, all achieved in one generation, 20, 30 years, right? If some nerds, middle class, lower middle class people with bootstrap model, no VC funding, no money from outside, bootstrap to build this industry, and to do this, I am very proud of what we have achieved. So what did I do? First, when I stepped down from Infosys, I contacted all my friends in the industry, recorded their stories in their own voices, and that's what itihasa.com has. So if you want to listen to FC Kohli, Ramadurai, Chandra, Narayan Murthy, Asim Premji, every one of them, there are 57 stories, each 45 minutes to 1 hour, full HD video, high quality video. So in that sense, I dabbled myself into production of videos and things like that. After that, people said, we need to carry something along with us. So we said we will publish a book, and that's the IT services story. But it is because of my admiration for these people, the respect for these people, and how proud I am of what we have been able to achieve. Because it's an impossible thing. India was not known to create a world-class industry at the highest level of quality and things like that. Now, this opportunity exists for us, and if we don't think at the nation level, if we do not think at the industry level, individual companies can't make this happen. So we are fierce competitors. We will fight like tooth and nail for every single project. Believe me, we will fight tooth and nail. There have been, complaints to government about some program didn't go to a particular company, XYZ company. All of that is there. We have been poaching each other, etc., from people from each other, etc. Fierce competitors, but still we work together. We create a NASCOM. We lobbied with the government for appropriate policy. And even today, the latest is the government of Karnataka came up with a policy saying that 50% of employees should come from Kannada background. Within 2 days, they withdrew it because of the power of the lobby of the industry. That's what we have been able to create and achieve. And we have also achieved creating a world-class industry from India. This opportunity exists now in multiple industries, and I believe if we can do that, and it has to be done systematically, and briefly I'll talk about it. But before that, let me just show you 3 slides. And to understand this, you have to look at the long arc of history. This is what I want to present on the slide. So the first slide shows from 1820 to 2010, where, and this you may have heard, right? 400 years back, 200 years back, India was a significant part of the world economy and things like that. And slowly it's coming back now. And the most important thing is, if you see, US at the beginning of the chart was 2% of the world economy. Today, US is the largest economy in the world, 19-20%, right? And I'll come back to this. So I've gone further back now, and India and China were actually the dominant force in the beginning of 2000 years back, right? Dominant. And we had knowledge. It was this, the societies are built on knowledge, IP, And that's what builds. Science, technology is what builds societies and wealth. I think this is a clear demonstration. I have one more slide, which is even interesting. This shows, it has put on top of the progress, the technologies which were introduced. Printing press, you can see accelerating growth. But look at the curve now. 0.4x to 1x to 2x to 4x to 20x. The growth is accelerating because of the growth in technology. Right? You talked about this. The science and technology is what creates the difference in the world in allowing us to grow. Now, why is it accelerating? We have multiple technologies that are going to create disruptions in multiple industries. And that gives acceleration to every industry. Look at electric vehicles and what it did to automotive industry. Tesla came out of nowhere. Nvidia, a $3 trillion company, out of nowhere again. So this is what creates the acceleration, and this is what is possible. Now, if you look at the IT services industry, we saw the disruption created by introduction of personal computer. We saw that this will be on desk of every business worker. It will automate the business processes. A lot of software will have to be written. Can we write those sitting here in India at a lower cost? It's not lower price. It's lower cost because India is a lower cost economy and still deliver world-class software sitting in India. You can shut down the slide. Can we do this? Right? And that's what we did. But it had to be then built on certain, again, very proactive measures we need to take. So we had to, if I look at the story of Infosys, the first 10 years was survival. The next 10 years was building the foundation. The third 10 years was scaling up the company and then sustaining that over now many years to come, because longevity is the best measure of a success of a company. And so Infosys is only 40 plus years. So we have a long way to go to say that we are successful. And hopefully it will be there for many, many years to come. First 10 years survival, we were just hanging by just our fingers at that point, because it was hand to mouth and we did whatever it was required to survive. We used to pre-bill the customer. So, we got into an agreement with them saying that we will raise the invoice at the beginning of the month so that they will pay, and end of the month we will have money to pay salaries. So we got paid in advance in some sense, right? But the second 10 years were very conscious, step-by-step building the foundations. So we created a training facility. In fact, all of us trained our employees in the beginning. We recruited, we trained, we sold, we delivered, we did everything that is required to build that company. Then we set up a quality system, because India was not known for quality. So we had to actually demonstrate to our clients that we have highest level of quality standards. So what did we do? We adopted the highest level known in software, which is the CMM model from Software Engineering Institute. And India had the largest number of ACI level 5 companies in the 90s. 67% of the ACI level 5 companies were in India. We created world-class infrastructure, because software you can't see. So when our customers walked in, when they saw the facility, they knew this company was world-class, because the offices were better than their own offices. Okay, so that was required. It also gave us another advantage, because Infosys campus is the most visited campus by heads of state. In India at least. There was more than 100 heads of state have visited Infosys. That's till I left Infosys. Probably many more have visited after that. Except for the US president, all G20 country heads have visited Infosys and spent at least half a day with us. Why? Because everybody heard about the world-class campus. Today, when I see public officials, when I meet ministers, ambassadors, they all talk about Infosys campus. That created the wow factor actually. They know this is a world-class quality company. When we listed, it was not for money. It was for recognition, right? So especially the NASDAQ listing, we said we will list on the most competitive stock exchange in the world, because we wanted our customers, who are primarily in the US, every day to read in Wall Street Journal the performance of Infosys vis-a-vis the best technology companies in the world. Because our performance, we knew, will be better than them, right? They will see the growth rates. They will see the stock performing. They understand that actually. And we do that. Highest level of corporate governance to build trust with all the stakeholders. Employee stock option plan, every single employee. Because we said we must share wealth with all the people. Again, it's also to attract the best employees to join. Why would they join a small company? In 1993, Microsoft came back to India, Oracle came back to India, IBM came back to India, every one of the technology companies came back to India. How would they join Infosys? We had to incentivize them to join, and that's the genesis of the stock option plan. And we gave it to every employee, right? So we created multiple millionaires and people like that. So every one of the things that we did had a purpose behind it in terms of brand building, in terms of building a quality company, in terms of creating a story. And we had several firsts. That did two things. One, we are continuously benchmarking the company with the best in India or around the world. We are pushing ourselves to the limit. We were the first company to say we'll be carbon neutral. And we achieved in 2020. One of the first in India to do that, right? Why? Because we said we will push ourselves and we will demonstrate that this is a world-class company and we are better than our clients, right? That's what brings respect. That's what brings the trust. That's what brings the confidence. And of course, we shared this to the industry, and that's again why I said we built an industry, because by and large, TCS, Wipro, again known for governance, known for performance, known for values and things like that, and employee practices, all of that. We compete. Sometimes they will be the best employer, other times we will be the best employer, and that's what we built. So the idea that I want to share with you is we can do that because India will become a $30 trillion economy in the next 25 years. I am very confident in saying that. Of course, certain things will have to fall in place. Per capita income will go from 2,500 to 18,000. 2,500 to 18,000. It will be probably the third or second largest economy in the world at that point, right? Unprecedented amount of wealth is going to be created, which will require large number of multinational corporations coming out of India. That's the opportunity each one of you will have. And every one of you, when you build your organization, you also need to build an industry, and you also need to put country first. Country, industry, organization. That has to be the hierarchy. If you don't do that, it will not happen. Somewhere we are going to stumble, where there will be a scandal. Just if you look at all the scandals that have happened, Satyam scandal was probably the best handled by anybody. The government stepped in, replaced the board. The industry together stood behind the customers and the industry by saying that we will not poach the customers, we will not poach the employees. It was a fantastic opportunity to go and tell the clients, this is a failed company, work with us. We said, no, we will not do that. We in fact told them, the government is doing everything to make sure that your work will not suffer. Right? So, every one of these things is to build confidence in the country, in the industry, and in the company. Right? And that is required. And everything that you do has to do this. And this was built into the value system which drives the organization, the culture that the organization has, right? And the way we thought about our business is that, this is what you wanted me to share with you. We said the company is the campus, business is the curriculum, and leaders shall teach. So leadership development became a formal process within the organization. We would identify people with high potential. We would actually map out where they would actually go in the organization in the future, what would be the next 3 promotions or 4 promotions that they would actually can aspire for. We will look at the gaps. We do a 360-degree assessment of those people, identify the gaps, and have a systematic program to bridge those gaps. Sometimes asking them to go for a executive program, sometimes assigning a mentor to them, assigning an external mentor to them. We created the Leadership Institute within Infosys and had a formal leadership development program. And we said every one of those leaders will also take a problem that is facing in the company, and by solving the problem, they also learn about the company, they establish themselves as leaders, they build credibility within the organization and learn how the organization works. And typically they take a problem outside their current set of responsibilities, right? Sometimes it is to solve a problem in the local community, or it is to solve a quality problem within a particular department and things like that, or issue with attrition, how do we address that? And there have been multiple problems within the company. It's not that the growth has been smooth. We have gone through multiple problems, and the way we have handled is because I believe that we built a learning organization, we create a culture of curiosity, inquisitiveness, innovation, and it's leadership by example, walk the talk. And these are the principles that we wanted the next generation of leaders to imbibe in that. And we also said, this is not going to be a family-run organization. None of our relatives are going to work in the company. We ourselves will step off the company when we reach 60 and hand it over to professional managers to them. There have been issues, stumbling along the way, but by and large, company is successful. Today, about $19 billion in revenue. The last market cap I saw was about $90 billion and doing reasonably well, highly profitable, etc. In the 40 years, there have been people who said, you can't maintain the profitability, growth will stumble, you will not make it to the next technology change that happens, because we are in an industry that's fast changing, right? Every 3-5 years, technology is changing. But the Indian industry has done extremely well. Infosys has done extremely well. And the reason, I believe, is the culture that we created, the processes that we created, working together as an industry to address these problems and sharing that knowledge between each other. When we got our quality certification, we actually took training to other companies in the industry. There have been instances where one of our customers would say, I got a better deal with, I'm just taking a name, TCS. Now, we will be forced to transition the work from Infosys to TCS because we know that what goes around comes around. So tomorrow it will be TCS who will lose a project to Infosys, and we need them to transition the work to us, right? But customers should never suffer, right? And in many cases, we all work the same customer, I'll take another example, Walmart, right? Their budget is so large that they work with 12 service providers, all of us working together side by side. And any given day, in a project team, there will be people from multiple organizations. We have to share knowledge. We have to share best practices. Industry did that. And that's what built this industry, right? So when I think about, India 2047, if we don't build world-class companies, we don't build world-class industry, we will not achieve that. I believe it can't be done by one or two companies being very large. I do not think we will go there, and definitely we will not get all-round growth. We will not get to the $18,000 per capita that we want. The growth will be very, very lumpy. We will have the income disparity that we see today and things like that. If we want all-round growth, we need multiple engines of growth, multiple industries growing. We want our agriculture sector, we want our manufacturing sector, we want our, let's say, energy sector. Every one of them will have to become best in class. Another learning from Infosys, every part of your business has to be world class for the organization to be called world class. If your HR practices are not world class, if your infrastructure maintenance is not world class, right? Because they need to feel proud. Another best practice I will tell you, every year we challenge every single department to come up with one or two big ticket improvements that they will come up with. Only if they come up with these, their additional budget will be sanctioned. Otherwise, typically what happens, budgets get slashed, right? Because they have to show productivity improvement, right? But if they show that they're going to do these new things, and with that they will get certain improvement, then additional budget will get sanctioned. We institutionalize that. That's why, there is a pressure on the finance department to get the best annual report award, right? Or a certain new standard to be followed. Every one of them is, it's a deliberate thing. We ask every single department to push themselves to the, we look at the quality journey also, from ISO to CMM level 5 to Malcolm Baldrige framework, then the environmental sustainability standards. It's a continuous journey. There is no end to this. This is a journey of excellence which has to be built into the fabric of the company. One last comment. At any point of time, today probably 30,000 projects get done in the company. Average project will have 20 people. Span of 4 to 6 months. Okay, 30,000 projects across the world happening any given day. The number, we have a classification, the number of critical risk projects will be about 50. High risk, where the customers are complaining, they're threatening that they will not pay us, probably less than 10. As a CEO, I have a dashboard where I can actually look at critical risk projects and high risk projects. And I actually review high risk projects, bring the might of the organization, 250,000 people across the world, maybe get resources, maybe ask for an extension of time, budget, etc. But I intervene at the CEO level. But only a handful of projects actually suffer. What happens because of that? 98% repeat business. The stickiness is very, very high. It keeps your sales and marketing costs low, and customer satisfaction is very high. Again, it's quality by design. We have the systems to do that, monitor this, develop those systems, we develop those metrics. the processes were created. Every single project will have to follow these processes, etc. You may ask innovation. I'll maybe come back to that in the Q&A. So over to you now.
Thank you, Kris. That was great. I think I took three big ideas away from that. The point about industry, not just firm. Yeah. And as you say, and as we always say in CI, right? Country first, industry second, CI third, and in CI we have the additional thing that you don't talk about your own firm, right? But, I think that hierarchy is very important. And I think your point about industry doing things together while competing is a very important one, and something for us to think about and see how it scales and applies across sectors. I think the second point on execution excellence is again very important and very fundamental. And I remember you telling me that you used to be personally involved in those 10 projects where there was a problem with payment, where the project got into as much trouble that there was a payment issue, and you knew every one of those each day, right, in terms of how it was moving. And that's with 30,000 projects underway in the company. I mean, that's just a mind-blowing level of distillation and then involvement in robust execution, which is really so distinctive. And then the third piece on that, look, if you want world-class, the world-class has to be everywhere.
Yes.
You can't be, okay, we'll be world-class with the customer, but what actually happens at the back end is something different. It has to be right across the chain. And I think these are very powerful indeed for us. So thank you. I'm going to ask you about one question on Infosys, actually. And then actually I want to talk about you. So the question on Infosys is, Infosys has had a wonderful run. The IT services industry has had a wonderful run. And each time that people would sort of say, they said, well, after the millennium, passes and the Y2K programming bonanza goes away, then what will happen to the industry? And all of that doom mongering came to nothing. The current doom mongering is around AI, and all the stuff that people keep talking about. That one highly qualified AI engineer can somehow do the work of 1,000 IT service programmers today. I mean, what's your prognosis for the next 10 years? Do you expect the IT services industry to continue to thrive? Do you expect it to change direction? Do you expect it to be a different kind of project that gets taken on? What's your view of the future? I mean, I'm sure it's something you think about, and even
not necessarily.
If you claim you're not involved in the business.
Yeah, but the architecture of the industry has to be understood for you to appreciate this. Actually, the services business is highly concentrated. 80% of the revenue comes from, this is 10 years back, 100 customers. We would have totally about 1,200 in those days. Today, probably maybe 1,500 or 1,800. But still, 80% of the revenue comes from limited number of customers. Very highly concentrated business. Second, these are some of the largest organizations in the world, right? Multi-billion-dollar today with market caps of $1 trillion, etc. Right? So their IT budgets are huge, but very fascinating aspect of this is whenever a new technology is introduced, they never replace the older system. They build a wrapper around it. So today, if you look at the software that runs a bank, the software that runs the retail company, the software that runs a manufacturing company, the ERP will be running in the mainframe, typically probably COBOL code. In the insurance industry, it's something called PL1. The code is PL1. I don't think anybody here will recognize what that is, right? It's a language which is a mix of C and COBOL, which IBM created, no longer exists. But there are companies which still use PL1 code. So what happens is, when you look at Infosys business or TCS business or Wipro business, 60-70% of the revenue comes from maintaining this huge investment that they've done.
It's not new code, new application.
Every time new technology is introduced, new applications are created. Mobile. So you need to create how to integrate mobile with all the previous generation of software that you have created. They never replace it. In fact, we have a joke which says, which is like this, they're so afraid to touch the code because the people who wrote that code are dead. Right? So nobody knows what is it. They don't want to touch it actually. They are afraid to touch it. So, in fact, to me, this is like an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah, it is.
The IT services industry in India today, especially the larger companies, have customers with whom they are working for 25-30 years. Okay? There isn't a single employee in their organization who have been there 30 years. We have the knowledge of their system more than they have their knowledge. So when an AI is introduced, it does create new capabilities. It allows new programs to be developed faster. It's like writing code in COBOL and writing code in Python. Right? Productivity increases. AI will increase the productivity further. It will allow you to debug the programs better, faster. It will allow you to do customer service better. But customer service is still done on the old ERP code. Right? Data comes from the old ERP system. So I believe that as long as you don't let yourself out of the race by ignoring one of these technology changes, right? Because you have to provide solutions in the AI world, right? You have to help the clients transition to take advantage of AI. If you don't do that, they will go to somebody else who can help them with AI, right? So the transition to digital, the transition to AI, the companies will have to step up and do that. Now, if you are able to do that, if you stay relevant, you will continue to be relevant to the client. You will be relevant in the industry. And India has become the default location. Where is the talent that knows legacy code, that knows AI? It's in India today. Where do product companies introduce their new products, beta version, etc.? Where do they train software engineers? In India? Because this is one of the largest bases of software engineers. More and more, the R&D is also shifting here. So all that knowledge is now residing in India. And I feel confident in saying that individual companies may fall off, but the industry, maybe as GCCs, global capability centers, will continue to flourish in India, because this has become the default location. Because this is just another generation of technology. The last thing I will say is, even though technology is introduced at rapid pace, the pace of change is driven by the ability for individuals and the company to adapt to this technology. That takes time. And that's the reason why you saw the hype around AI. It's because consumer adoption. People are paying this $20 to use the ChatGPT. Right? But enterprises are not creating huge applications to take advantage of these things. Now, what AI can do is, behind this is the sensor revolution. Humongous amount of data, Internet of Things and sensors is going to be created by leveraging IoT and sensors. Now, it's not humanly possible without use of technology to take advantage of that data. This is where the application of AI is going to create the biggest impact, right? And this is where you create machine intelligence, truly augment human intelligence in a significant way, in probably an order of magnitude, and that's the curve I showed. Every time technology is introduced, you have an acceleration of productivity, and that acceleration will happen when we now apply sensor technology, networking, and use AI to actually build intelligence into these systems, which will surely happen because we are throwing the power of machines, which is far greater than human ability to manage data, comprehend data. A machine can read 10,000 X-ray images in a second now. No human can do that. Right? You can train the machine to do that. And that's what is going to create the huge productivity improvement, and that will happen. And then the radiologists will lose their jobs. They have to figure out something else to do. So job losses will happen somewhere. In the IT industry, if you are able to create those programs which will read those X-rays and interpret them, you need to create training data, you need to train the system, you need to integrate that with, it's stored somewhere, collected somewhere, you have to collect all the sensor data, you have to connect with X-ray machines, all of that will have to be done. You have to repurpose existing X-ray machines to have sensors in them. A lot of work needs to be done to make this into a reality. This is where Indian IT services companies will probably see at least next 20 years worth of growth, I feel.
So your advice is that we should keep our Infosys and Wipro stock.
No comments.
No comments.
No stock advice on shares.
So I want to ask you one more question, and then we open it up to everyone. So, one of the most interesting things is what you've done after Infosys. And what you've done after Infosys, you're really involved in the startup ecosystem. Kris started a center of excellence, the 10th CI Center of Excellence, focused on startups. And one of the key elements there was to get mainstream Indian companies to start engaging with startups. And our company was one of the participants in the program, and we're, as a result, now very engaged with startups in many sectors. It's been a really productive, interesting thing. It's something that came out of that center. You're very involved in the research ecosystem. We were talking about this earlier this evening as well. And you're very involved in education. You're the chair of the board of the Indian Institute of Science. You're obviously one of Nayanta Education's founders and the chair of Nayanta Education Foundation itself. And, what drives you now?
So the funny story I will tell you.
I know, by the way, about the bucket list and driving across the US and some of those things, but why don't you spend all your time doing that?
Well, you can do that for 2 weeks.
Huh. Yeah.
What about the
what about the 50 weeks?
50 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Second is, the interesting thing that happened to me the first month after I stepped down from Infosys, because, I had not really, my life revolved around Infosys. 24 hours a day, wake up hours, sleeping hours, eating, everything was around Infosys. My, friend circle, Infosys, everything was around Infosys. And suddenly, there's a huge vacuum. And the first month, I started bothering my wife, and my daughter was also at home at that time. Within 3-4 weeks, they said, please get out of the house. Right? You are driving us nuts. Well, it's not just that, but I have a platform, right? I have done everything that you can probably do. Of course, not everything, but a lot of things I've been able to do. CI president, co-chair at World Economic Forum, represented the global industry at Rio Plus 20 in Rio in 2012. I've done all these things. So what next? But there is a platform that I have now, and I felt that I must leverage this platform. I also know that what we achieved in IT services industry. If we can do it, many others can do that, right? We are not extraordinary people. We are ordinary middle class people, not the top of the class, not all that stuff, no wealth, but we did that. So many people can do that. We need to show how this can be done. And I said, I'm going to concentrate on education, primarily tertiary education, not primary education, research, innovation, entrepreneurship. That's the value chain I felt can have the maximum impact from what I've been able to learn and my experiences, and maybe help few others to do these things. And that's what drove me to work with startups, funding them. And there's a lot of wealth in India, but they don't invest in the startup ecosystem. They don't. We have to have a very dynamic and robust ecosystem of new business creation in the country. This is what drives the US economy. We can, all that acceleration, every one of those companies is 50 years or less. The $1 trillion companies in market cap, every one of them is less than 50 years old. Again, in my lifetime, I've seen this happen. So we can achieve this in India. If I can play a role in making that happen. Just like I was fortunate to see the computer industry grow to where it is, I felt that it's a good way for me to spend my life, and I make money doing that also. So I invest in startups and I get returns on that. I make sure that those investments actually give me actual returns. Research is a longer term play because it will take probably much longer. But still, I feel that if again we have a portfolio approach, if we do 10 things or 20 things, we will succeed in 2-3 things. And that will give again exponential returns and make up for any other losses. And that's the platform. People listen to me. I can go in and say, let's take 3,600 crores of government money and lose it. Right? It's worthy if we actually try to change 25 best institutes in the country to address the question of translational research and innovation. India desperately needs that. We need policies. And if people are willing to listen to me, I'm glad the family offices are now investing in startups. They are creating alternate investment vehicles. There are many more people looking at startups. It's fun doing it actually. We went to Kerala and created something called Startup Village, and they celebrated a single day as a freedom day across all the engineering colleges in Kerala. I was very proud. The government announced Freedom Day. All engineering colleges said they will allow engineering students to start a company in the second year, run that company till the fourth year. They get 20% attendance waiver and 7% grace marks for running that organization. Every student wanted to get 20% attendance waiver, so they would do a startup. No, we said, when is the best time to fail? When you are a student, right? You don't, because your parents are taking care of you, you don't need any salary. It's very cheap to actually experiment and fail. The minute you get a degree and come out, you're looking at competing for salary, right? I want 1 lakh, I want 2 lakh, I want 10 lakhs, right? If you do a startup and say, I can only pay myself 10,000, you start calculating how much money I lost. But as a student, if you get 2,000 rupees as salary, you're very happy. We were able to get UGC to adopt, AICTE to adopt this into the curriculum. And these small, I believe, small changes over time will create that. So in the startup side, I'm very happy with what we have been able to achieve in the last 10 years. Prime Minister led from the front. He created Startup India, Stand Up India. because we need from the highest level this to be championed. I'm hoping that in the research side also, we will make an impact. It's a tougher sell. Industry has to step forward. Every one of your organization, you must ask the question, what percentage of your revenue is coming from products introduced in the last 3 years? How much of your new products are coming from R&D outside your organization? How many startups are you actually acquiring? These are the engines for innovation, right? The knowledge outside your organization is 100 or million times more than the knowledge within the organization. Organizational thinking is actually straitjacketed. Everybody after some time starts to think alike. Every solution looks identical. Maybe because that's what the CEO wants to do, right? So you have to go outside. You have to go to an academic setup where there is no baggage. There is no, students come up with crazy ideas. And some of them succeed. That's what you are. In fact, one of the reasons why we started the Center of Excellence is asking the innovation team in an enterprise to co-locate within the entrepreneurial team with a startup. Because the way the startups work is very different from the way an established company works. They have a speed of execution because they run out of funds and they will die. So they run at a crazy speed. They cut corners. If you are within an organization, it doesn't happen. You are spending your profits. They are spending somebody else's money, which is risk funding. The funding agency, the investor knows that I'm willing to lose that money. Very different. And that's what we want to do, in the company. And that's why, that's what I'm doing. And
one of the questions that I've always had in my head is the IT services business is such a successful business, a very profitable business as well. One of the areas where I've always wondered, why do we not see greater investment in R&D, right? We see some. So Infosys is one of the top 20 investors in R&D and has consistently been for many years, but it's 1% of turnover, roughly. The same is true of TCS, the same is true of Wipro, etc. I mean, Wipro's less actually. So, it's a small percentage of turnover. And why does an Infosys or a TCS, say you can talk about a TCS or a Wipro, not say, hey, listen, we'll invest $1 billion in R&D, 5% of turnover in R&D, and simply say, and see what we can do with products as an offshoot. It may not work out.
So, my thinking from those days again, because I can't say what current CEO is thinking.
But
current management.
But looking at the industry as a whole.
So, see, the success of the industry has been because it's single-mindedly focused on becoming world-class in IT services.
Yeah.
Right? It's very difficult to become world-class in everything that you do. You have to have single-minded focus. A product company cannot do very good services. There is also a problem with one vertical subsidizing another vertical. So if you become a product company selling services, your services will get subsidized. Or if you become a services company selling products, the products will get subsidized. I can see that happening. Infosys goes to a bank and sells the software. They say, that software, you have to make it work. You say, go to somebody else to make it work, right? Because we are selling the license to you. They say, no, you have to make it work. Then only we'll pay for the product also. Because one vertical will get subsidized. So we stayed focused on services. And for services, the innovation required is more because there is still, the Indian total addressable market that we are addressing is probably 10% or 15% maximum. there's headroom for growth. There's market expansion, there's client expansion, there are service expansion. There are larger, Accenture is significantly larger than us. So we have lot more headroom to grow, and if we don't stay focused, we will lose out the advantage that we have. There's only so much bandwidth that you have, that I think the reason why we succeeded is single-mindedly we said we will be the best in one thing that we do, and there we will have the highest growth and the highest margins. Product business is very different. The structure of that business is very different. The revenue profile is very different. It's R&D intensive. You have to upfront invest. Risk is higher because it may fail. Or your investors will actually punish you if you don't actually give the right signals. So the companies are investing into R&D relevant to their businesses. In fact, they spend more money on retraining people. So if you look at the amount of money spent on training is about 3 to 4%. Very high.
Much more than on R&D.
Yes. That is because we have to continuously retrain the people to stay relevant. Because if the employees are not relevant, the company is not relevant. Right? So it is architected, constructed with the objective of staying focused on services.
So I have a last question, since it's a Nayanta conversation. So what's your dream for Nayanta?
So India requires world-class private universities. Just like we keep saying that why don't we have a Harvard here, why don't we have an MIT here? Okay, we can push the government to do whatever they need to do, but there's a limit. See, you have to be within the system to change the system. We can only push the system so much from outside. So we need to have experiments in the private side to create world-class universities. And I'm hoping that many of these experiments will fructify and we will be able to create a world-class university in India. And hopefully Nayanta is one of them. And so I feel the last thing I will say, government is made of us only. It's not some set of people from aliens from outside.
Yeah, it's like us.
It's like us. Right? So we need to try to change the government, influence them, create a story, create a narrative that forces change to happen. We need to lobby, we need to do these things. And this is again my learning from the IT services industry. But you also need to do things outside the government. There are a lot of things which is under your control. And can you make that happen? And that's the Nayanta experiment.
Totally.
Luckily, we found few people who think alike, who are really passionate about it, who want to make this happen in India. It's fun. Again, it's a startup. And
it is a startup. It is a startup.
Yes. So,
as we're discovering, you have to do everything that you need to do in a startup.
Yes. Right. Exactly. I've experienced all this.
Yeah. Great. Kris, thank you so very much.
Thank you all very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
I hope you have some understanding of what we have been able to do. And what I ask of you is create big goals for yours. Create big goals for your organization, for your industry. We need that for our country, and that's why I showed the slide. What US did in 20th century, India can do in the 21st century. Because unlike China, you were asking about China and India. India has the diversity and has the culture and at least today the governance which allows entrepreneurship to flourish. Why did OpenAI happen in US rather than in China? China for 10 years was supposed to be the #1 in publication of AI in journals and things like that, was spending more money on AI and things like that, but still OpenAI happened in US. Because of the entrepreneurial ecosystem that exists. India has that in our DNA. We are a country of entrepreneurs. Maybe single employee, but we are a country of entrepreneurs. Every day, we figure out how to get things done in everything that we do. Nothing holds us back. We will figure out a way to get things done. In our DNA is entrepreneurship. We need to leverage that with a single-minded focus and purpose to say that we will create a world-class company, we will create a world-class industry, and we will create a country that's second to none. That's all.
Thanks.